Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly believe they can do no wrong and they're the center of the universe. And this episode's going to be hilarious, guys. We've got Karens getting embarrassed, thinking they're above the law, and one OP tells the story about the time their family defeated another family of nasty Karens. I hope you enjoy the stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. Okay, so right now I'm feeling proud of myself for doing something wild. This past weekend, my wife and I decided to visit her family. They live in a much larger city than we do, and we go now and again to break up the monotony. On Saturday, my wife and her sister wanted to go shopping at one of the malls in the area. Not wanting to do nothing alone, I tagged along. At some point, while listening to their girl talk, I decided to go grab a bite, so I told my wife and headed to the food court. At this point, the lunch rush was still going on, so the place was fairly packed. I decided on Chinese, a place I've been to before, so I trusted the food was good. So I got in line to wait like anyone else. Now, this particular restaurant was pretty simple. It had 4 cashier lanes and grills behind it where you could watch the cooks make your order while you wait. But being a Chinese place, it took a lot longer than the typical fast food place, so the lines were moving slowly. While waiting, I start people watching the crowd to avoid getting bored. Nothing out of the ordinary until I noticed the dad with 2 boys a bit ahead of me in the line next to me. The 2 boys were for sure under 10, and they must have been getting impatient because they would periodically start to screw around or bug the dad. They would push each other around, whine loudly about the slow-moving line, and ask when they would have food. Typical young kid stuff. Meanwhile, the dad looked like he was growing more agitated by the minute. Every time he had to turn to deal with these 2, his face grows redder and redder. The trouble started when the dad finally reached his turn. The girl politely did the usual and asked him for his order, but instead of ordering the food, the dad starts to complain, mainly about how long he and the 2 boys were in line for. The girl did her best to be polite, but he kept going for a few minutes. And by this time, the gentleman behind the trio was also getting annoyed. The guy noticed me, and he gestured to the dad with the "you gotta be kidding me" look. I just respond with a shrug. I just thought to myself, if that guy was in such a hurry, why not get your food and be done with it? Eventually, the girl at the register was able to get the order. I was now second in place in my line, and right next to the 2 kids by this point. I could hear the angry dad go into a tirade about the performance of the restaurant, and he insisted if it wasn't for his kids wanting Chinese food, they would have gone to a much better place. He then tells the girl how the Japanese place next to them was way better, but because it was currently closed, he had to suffer through this. It actually got to the point that the dad even starts to insult the poor girl behind the counter. At this point, the gentleman behind the dad and some others were getting involved, saying they're just doing their best, but the guy shoots back with the typical, "I'm a paying customer, so I can do what I want." The guy just kept going. The girl was obviously growing upset as the dad was bullying her, and I could start to see tears form in her eyes. The guy just wouldn't give her a break. The gentleman behind the trio was looking like he was ready to throw punches. At this moment, I really wanted to do something, but I didn't want to get into a fight. And that's when I noticed it. This guy was wearing cargo shorts. Shorts that looked a smidge too loose, as it was kind of hanging down past his waist, revealing his underwear. I thought for a long, hard second, and then I found myself just reacting, and the whole thing took only a few seconds. I stepped forward, between the dad and the 2 kids, and then grabbed both side loops of his pants and then yanked as hard as I could, bringing his cargo pants to his ankles. I then immediately ran for it. I heard a lot of screaming behind me, but not wanting to get pummeled by an angry dad, I didn't even look back. I just ran as fast as I could to the other side of the mall, where my wife was still shopping with her sister. I felt safe enough in the girls' clothing store next to my wife, so after I caught my breath, I just start laughing hysterically. My wife asked, "What the F?" and I just told her I would tell her later. I didn't want to spoil their shopping, so I spent the rest of the time keeping an eye out for angry dad. I did spot them at one point, now with the blonde lady and a little girl in tow, but that was it. I was lucky enough to avoid them. We were in the mall for another hour, but before leaving the mall, I just had to know. I went back to the Chinese place, and luckily, the young girl was still there, so I waited to talk to her. When I got the chance, I asked her what happened to the guy. She told me that somebody yanked his pants down mid-tirade, and the guy who did the deed just took off. But the entitled dad couldn't catch him because he couldn't leave his kids behind and take off after a complete stranger. The entitled dad, being the official center of attention, just grumbled the rest of the time. He got his food, paid, sat down on the opposite side of the food court somewhere. I wanted to laugh and tell her it was me who did the pantsing in public, but I decided not to, even though I really wanted to. I told my wife later when we got back, and we had a laugh. She of course scolded me for pulling such a stunt, and she told me to grow the F up. But she was ultimately proud of me for finding such a funny method for helping the cashier. Right now, I'm still beaming about it, and I just wanted to share with you. Not all heroes wear capes, and seriously, what a gutsy, hilarious move by OP. That is one effective way to shut down an angry person. Just pantsing them in public. And what made it even better is the fact that even though the guy probably wanted to hunt OP down and murder him, he couldn't, as he would have had to leave his young kids behind to catch OP. What a move that was. And honestly, that's what the guy gets for being such an a-hole to a cashier, just trying her best. So here's some quick background. I work in a county jail, and I'm the guy you want working the floor. I'm pretty good at dealing with and talking to inmates, and I'm even better when we're past the point of talking. That being said, every officer is required to work guard station at least once a month, even me. These stations are just dealing with public, answering phones, and opening and closing doors for people. On one such guard station shift, Karen storms in. She's the southern kind of Karen. Totally unkempt hair, ratty clothes, at least 5 missing teeth, and a criminal record that's largely drug-related charges. You know the type. So the woman marches into my lobby up to my bulletproof window. I hit the intercom and this following conversation ensues. I ask Karen, "Can I help you, ma'am?" She then says, "My son, Joseph, needs to be released right now. He has served his time and he needs to come home." Me, looking up her son on the jail computer, say, "Ma'am, he's got a hold out of blah 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 county. He'll have to go to court and serve time there first." At that, Karen says, "No, he needs to be released right now. His time here is done. He can go to blah blah county after he comes home." Me, already over it, tell her, "Ma'am, this isn't a hotel where your son can come and go as he pleases. The law requires that he's in custody until he answers for all the crimes he's charged with. If I release your son, I will be fired and arrested. He's a criminal." Karen replies with, "Well, aren't you supposed to serve and protect?" I tell her, "Yes, ma'am, but your son was charged with 5 counts of domestic assault and robbery, and he has multiple felony charges in blah 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 county. Keeping him in custody serves and protects the public." Hearing me say that, Karen loses it, and she says, "How dare you? I'll have you know that my son is actually a good boy, and he doesn't deserve this. And I know for a fact that other inmates are threatening him. What are you going to do to serve and protect him?" Me, suppressing a grin at this point, tell her, "Well, ma'am, I can go ahead and make an announcement to the other inmates to leave him alone, and that his mother called and said she's not happy with their behavior. I'm sure that won't put him in any danger. Should I go ahead and make the announcement right now?" Karen just says to me, "Are you getting smart with me? I demand to speak to your supervisor." And me, knowing that Sarge is about the last guy you want to piss off, tell Karen it would be my pleasure to let you speak to my supervisor. So Sarge arrives and he asks Karen what the issue is, and she rants and raves for 15 minutes, I kid you not, about how her boy is so sweet, how he's wrongfully incarcerated. She rants about my behavior and how her son's in danger and he served his time. She then concluded that if we didn't release her son, she would raise all hell in the lobby. And at this point, Sarge just raises his eyebrows in a look I know pretty well. It's a look that means, "I'm genuinely impressed you're this stupid." Sarge then says to Karen, "I remember you. You've been in jail before. I wonder where your son got it." She then goes off to rant again, and that's when Sarge cuts her off and says, "You so much as fart in my lobby. Jail cops is going to arrest you on disorderly. Your son is going to pay for what he's done on our schedule, not yours, and certainly not his. You are now going to leave my jail and never come back. If you ever come here again, you will be charged with criminal trespass. Now why don't you go outside and play hide and go F yourself?" Karen doesn't even think about mouthing off again. She just runs out of the lobby. Sarge and I have a laugh about it later, and amazingly, Karen never filed any complaints. Not that it would have gotten her anywhere. This is how the South do. Holy moly, some parents really live with the mentality of my child can do no wrong. Like that is next level entitlement to go into a jail and demand your son be released immediately. Like, oh, I know my son committed multiple crimes, but in my opinion, he served his time. Let him go now. And guys, the part about getting inmates to stop picking on her son was hilarious, and OP's response was the best too. "Oh, should I make an announcement to tell inmates that Joseph's mom wants them to ease up?" Like, I don't know what it's like in jail, but I'm pretty sure Mama's Boy is not the title you'd ever want. So this story isn't mine, but it's something that happened to my oldest brother a little before I was born. This came up while talking about entitled people with my mom, and I laughed so hard at this story I had to share it. This is about my oldest brother Andy, his encounter with this entitled and jealous boy, that boy's entitled mom, and the pure savagery of my mom and dad, and another contender later on. So with my mom being pregnant with her fourth kid, me at the time, they wanted to move into a much better house and new neighborhood. Anyways, they find a good house that can fit all of them in a good neighborhood close to my parents' work and the surrounding schools. It's the early 90s, so people check out the new neighbors. Now immediately, my brother Andy is getting a lot of attention from the girls in the neighborhood. He was 16 years old, tall, and he was the new face, and above all, very handsome. He got a lot of attention from the girls, not only in the neighborhood, but at the new school he was going to. And this did not sit well with this entitled, jealous son, who before my brother was the hot kid in the neighborhood. He couldn't stand that my brother was getting the attention. My mom also says what may have bothered him most is that Andy never even noticed. He just thought people were being nice as he wasn't seeking popularity. Well, the kid made it clear that he didn't like my brother, and he starts relentlessly harassing him on and off school. It started off with snide remarks, verbal harassment. My brother Andy just ignored it though, as he's the kind of guy who gave no craps on what people he didn't like said. This, of course, pissed off the entitled boy even more. So the guy starts getting physical, sometimes ramming into my brother, taking his things, and even at school, he would corner my brother and try to beat him up. And the thing is, Andy never fought back, not wanting to get in trouble for fighting back. But my mom did notice him getting quieter and more banged up than usual. My brother was also taking kickboxing lessons, so bruises weren't new, just never in the face. It was my older sister who then told my mom about the kid. My mom just kind of looked shocked, and she asked, why didn't Andy defend himself? To which my brother tells her, we get automatically suspended if we fight at school, even if it's defending ourselves. We're just supposed to tell a teacher. My mom asked, then why don't you tell a teacher? Andy says he also wasn't a snitch, and plus, it would probably up the bullying. And this is when my dad apparently shouts from the other room, so, you won't get in trouble at home, so just pop him one in the nose. You're a kickboxer, aren't ya? Andy still wasn't convinced though. My dad was one thing, but my mom, he didn't want to disappoint her or bother her with this, since she was about to have a baby and working a new job. She assured him that wouldn't happen, and if that boy got physical, it was okay for Andy to defend himself. And this is where it gets funny, you see. My dad was able to find out the kid's name from my older sister, and my dad's the kind of man who somehow is friends with like everyone. He knew the kid's dad and the principal at the high school. The kid was a football player, and he wasn't allowed to play at the next game. Well, the boy's obviously not happy, and he makes some plans to confront my brother. So he and his group of friends start trailing behind Andy, my older sister, and my other older brother one day. A crowd of kids start gathering because apparently the boy had spread the word that he was going to face off against my brother and beat him. The jealous boy starts smack-talking how he had to get my dad to fight his battles, while a crowd just gathers at our house on our lawn. My siblings try to ignore them and just go inside, but his buddies are blocking them from going anywhere. With my siblings held up, the boy takes his chance. He grabs Andy by the shoulder and starts wailing on him. Andy normally is not a confrontational guy. My sister and other brother are shouting, "Leave our brother alone." It's at this point, my older brother Josh, who's 11 at the time, tries to help Andy. Josh gets smacked in the face by this boy and told to stay out of it, and that was a big mistake. Andy just snaps at that point as he's been pushed around, harassed, and he's tired of this kid's BS, and no one picks on his family. So the boy and Andy go to town, but as mentioned, and what the boy didn't know, is that Andy was training in kickboxing, and he's been a kickboxer since he was 10, so yeah, he's winning and winning badly. The kid just starts sniffling and he's getting flustered, unable to land another hit. And that's when my mom comes out hearing the commotion. The crowd of kids is just silent and Andy just stares there wide-eyed at my mom. Meanwhile, the kid's smirking, thinking Andy's about to get in trouble. My mom takes one panning look at the crowd, then the frozen place of her son and the smug look on the kid's face. She then says this out loud. She says, "Kick his ass, Andy." The color drains from the boy's face. The whole crowd is silently staring at the pissed off pregnant mama bear. Just then, the kid's mom comes home and sees the commotion, and she of course is furious. She pulls her son away, doting on him, while he's fake crying, saying my brother attacked him for no reason. She glares at Andy first, but then even more at my mom. She says, "You just let this happen? What the heck is wrong with you? Control your son." My mom screams at her and says, "Your son has assaulted and picked on my son for months. My boy was defending himself. If your son doesn't want to get into a fight, he shouldn't start them." The mom's of course red-faced and just glaring at my brother. She then says, "You need to apologize right now and I won't call the police." My brother Andy, who's never gotten in that kind of trouble in his life, is about to do just that, but my mom stops him and says, "Andy, you don't apologize to people who don't deserve one. Now you go inside and clean up. I'll deal with this." She then says to the mom and her son, "Get the F off my lawn." The mom gets all red-faced and she's about to say something more when my dad pulls up. My dad, who's 6'5", deep-voiced, a burly-looking man, gets out of his car and he says, "I don't care what happened, go home." He then shuts the door in her face. A day goes by and who appears but the boy, the mom, and the husband on our doorstep. The son's looking rather ashamed, the mom looks livid, and the unsung hero, the father, just has a look of "I'm done with this" and "I'm so disappointed" in both of them on his face. My mom answers with crossed arms, and my dad's coming up from behind, giving the other guy a wave. We'll call him Joe. And he's in the living room, just kind of sitting there. My dad then says, "Hey Joe, what's this about?" The husband then says, "Hey Paul, you gotta ask her." He then rolls his eyes at his wife, his hands in his pockets, as the woman just crosses her arms, staring my mom down. She then says to my mom, "We're here for an apology from your son to ours." At that, her husband says, No, what are we really here for?" My dad just says, "No, let her talk, and why should my son do that?" She then goes on and says, "Because your son has harassed mine ever since he moved here. He's been nothing but trouble to my son. That's made him so upset that he's been getting poor grades and now he's kicked off the team because of made-up allegations." My mom at this point was completely done with this woman. My mom tells her, "Well, it's clear where your son gets his crappy attitude from. You spoil him so damn much that I bet you'd believe any excuse he threw at you. Your son has been verbally and physically bullying and harassing my son since we moved here. My son never threw a punch until your son started attacking him and his siblings, keeping them from getting to our home, and we have several witnesses to prove these claims. It's your son who should be apologizing. And frankly, so should you for ruining him like this, thinking he can do no wrong. The woman gets all flustered and red in the face, and the son is so shocked that someone's talking to his mom like this. But the husband just has enough, and he stops her saying, "Yeah, I had a feeling that was the real situation." He then hits his kid in the back of the head, and he says, "Boy, you'd better apologize, or you can kiss your allowance goodbye for a month. And if I hear you pull this crap while I'm away again, it's going to be gone for good this time." The mom doesn't take this well, and she says, "No, our son should not have to apologize. Why are you taking their side?" The husband then says out loud, "You know this isn't the first time he's pulled this, right? And I'm sick of dealing with it. You let him get away with anything while I'm gone, but no more this time." He then says to his son, "Now effing apologize, and I swear if I hear about this while I'm away again, I will turn my truck around and punish you myself." The boy just kind of stands there, not happy, and he tries to say he's sorry with his head down. But his dad makes him look my brother in the eye and say, "I'm sorry, won't happen again." And he just kind of stood there in shock, and he nods and says nothing else. The mom, meanwhile, is still fuming, and she's wanting an apology, but husband is completely done. He grabs his son by the shoulder and his wife by the arm, and he pulls them away saying, "I'm sorry about this. Y'all have a nice evening, and you let me know if he disturbs you again." My mom just flashes a smile of gratitude his way, and after that, no one bothered any of my siblings again. The mom still gave them dirty looks apparently, but they ended up moving when I was born, so it didn't matter too much. Also, Joe was a truck driver. He would be gone for days delivering stuff across the country, so that's why he was gone a lot and why he was such a hard ass. Absolutely perfect example of good parenting versus horrible parenting, guys. And I'm glad the dad recognized his son's bad behavior and is willing to help correct it, instead of acting like their son can do no wrong. And I'm not gonna lie, I laughed out loud when Opie's mom shouted, "Kick his ass, Andy." Like, I'm not one for violence, but in that situation where Andy was getting picked on relentlessly, that was the justice that needed to be served. Like, I'm just imagining Andy pulling out his kickboxing moves that the boy had no idea about. And then that voice that says it was in that moment he knew he effed up playing. But yeah, I always feel sorry for the good parent in these situations, having to drag their spouse and child out to sort out their mess. So my friend forgot my birthday this year, and it was the second time she's done this. For some context, we're in our early 20s, we're not married, no kids yet. I'm not a big birthday person, and it wasn't a milestone year. So I asked a week before my birthday if she just wanted to go grab lunch as it was a Sunday. She said she had a trip planned, which was understandable. I end up having dinner with another friend. My birthday rolled around, and not even a happy birthday, but she did text me numerous times to send me pictures of her getting her nails done, her drink order, etc. Fast forward to her birthday, which is in January. She wants to go to a really fancy restaurant where prices are between $100 to $150 per person, and since it's a birthday, I will be required to buy a gift too. Firstly, this took me by surprise because we never planned to celebrate together. And honestly, I would never spend that much on one meal anyway, as I think it's kind of absurd, especially in this current economic climate where groceries are a lot of money. I mentioned to her that I'm on a tight budget as I'm saving towards a big purchase, alongside paying the usual bills. Not to mention, Christmas has just passed, so it's been a period of spending on gifts and food, and she got angry at me. And here's the thing, she just recently got a raise at work, so she's been kind of on a spending spree as a reward. Am I justified in feeling a little ticked off that she expects me to do the same and spend an absurd amount of money in celebrating her? Yeah, I'm just gonna say that if OP's friend was a true friend, they would 1000% understand OP's financial situation. And for OP's friend to not even acknowledge OP's birthday and then want to make a big deal out of theirs is such a crappy thing to do. Like, OP is 1000% not the a-hole, and honestly, maybe it's time OP distanced themselves from that friend, because with friends like that, who the heck needs enemies? Guys, let me know your thoughts. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/EntitledPeople. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode, where bad bosses are getting absolutely destroyed. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.